You guys have been asking for it. The fans of Noevorden Celtic have been asking for it, and it's finally here. The stadium's complete, and it's Champions League night, right here in Noevorden. Today, I'm going to run you through how I built this stadium, what mods you need if you want to build something similar yourself, and there are quite a few new ones in play here. I'll talk you through all the inspiration for today's build, as well as some of the asset choices for the area surrounding the stadium, and how I decided to hook it up to the city's transport options. This one turned out exceptionally well. I hope you're going to enjoy it. Inspiration for today's build is going to come from two stadiums. First up is Celtic Park in Glasgow, home to the most successful team in Scotland and the only professional team of note in the city. Only joking, of course, Glasgow does have other professional teams of note. We've got Partick Thistle and Queen's Park. This stadium is home to the mighty Glasgow Celtic. This is a 60,000 capacity stadium, and it really comes to life on Champions League nights with its electric atmosphere. The next stadium we're going to borrow from is FC20 Stadium in Enschede in the Netherlands, not far from Noevorden, in fact, on the border to Germany. I'm going to be using their colours, and I'll be redesigning the club logo to reflect the creation of our fictional Noevorden team. Although being half the capacity of Celtic Park, it looks very similar, and it looks like a stadium that would give a great atmosphere. The stands are steep, and that usually makes for a lively ground with some good acoustics. I want to give a huge shout out to Yorkie Pudd. He asked me a while back in a Discord for a stadium idea. I suggested that he build Celtic Park, and he delivered a really cool build. There's a couple of concepts like using Right Anywhere to colour the stands, and the usage of glass on the main stand that come directly to this build. He doesn't make Skylines content, but if you're interested in Transport Fever 2, you might want to take a look at his channel. So we're going to be kicking off things exactly where we left it in the last episode. This parcel of land that's very much enclosed by roads and other development is going to be our build area for today. We do have a fair amount of traffic from the industrial build, and this development today isn't really going to add to it much. But what it will bring to the table is another landmark and another point of interest that's going to look really good in the city. So to kick things off, there was a couple of little adjustments I wanted to make. The interchange here, or the intersection here rather, was struggling a little bit at times, so I want to make sure that we do have enough capacity going forward. I don't envision that this will be particularly busy, but I just want to make sure that there is definitely enough capacity and it looks the part for the amount of development that we have in this particular parcel of land. Based on the feedback from you guys, I also made a few adjustments here, which you'll probably see when I scroll out a little bit in terms of the bike lanes. I've moved the bike lanes towards the road side of the development rather than the pedestrian paths being on the road side of the development. I believe that's a safety measure based on what you guys are telling me, so you might see some of it on here, you might see some of it come into play a little bit later on. As I say, I do listen to all suggestions. I don't necessarily implement them, but if it's easy enough, it's not going to take me all day, then I certainly will. As always, I want to give a huge thank you to our members here on Patreon and YouTube. Tons of new people signing up here. Obviously, with Patreon, you get the game save if you want it. YouTube, you get your name in the credits and a few other bits and pieces. But if you want to see the details on what the differences are, the links are all in the channel description. But it's really nice to see so many new names here, along with the people that have supported for such a long time. And I reckon we're going to have to start a second shout out box because I'm really running out of space here and keeping the text legible for the shout outs. Now, in terms of getting the actual stadium done with the main stands, it's nothing groundbreaking here. It's stuff that we've done on the channel a couple of times already. I'm going to use the football stadium or the football pitch or whatever it's called in the normal assets. We'll get rid of some of the props on there, and once that's done, we're just going to build up the stadium using the sports stands, and we'll use Move It to get the heights and really just get it the way that we want it to look. Now, I did think long and hard about actually filling up this stadium, and we've kind of done that before, but if you think back in the F1 circuit that we did, I filled up a couple of stands with props, your prop people. It looked good, but my god, it was some tedious work, and frankly I just couldn't face it. So if I get particularly bored one day, I might come back and fill the stadium, but today is definitely not the day. Now, part of the reason why I used the stadiums that I did, with the inspiration shown at the beginning of the video, is that one, I'm a Celtic fan, so I just wanted a stadium that kind of looked like that, and that's pretty much a given. But also, it's pretty easy to build in terms of the overall shape. The stands work pretty well. The scale isn't too far off overall, I don't think. And once we get all of the props and all of the colour work done at the end, then it really isn't too far off what we actually find in real life. I think we got relatively close at least anyway. Now, I'm sure that we will get stadiums in the editor at some point. I have zero skills to make one myself, but I did see one on Discord that looked really exceptional, so Hopefully we get a few more, but for the time being, building them up like this is pretty much the only way to go. Now the scale looked a little bit off on that smaller stand, so I just kind of raised it up, pushed it back a little bit, added a sort of half stand there up against the pitch, and then we just built out the rest of the assets to go along with it. With the overall shape and the overall scale of the development and the stadium sorted, I'm going to move on and get some of the colour work done. So we're going to use a combination of recolour, and we're going to be using Right Anywhere for it as well. So along the stands here and along the roof, simple recolour for this element. Pretty straightforward, we've used that plenty in the past, but round the sides we don't have the choice to actually recolour the outside external back of the stands. Now I'm not going to run through how to use Right Anywhere. I'd struggled, I'll be honest, to remember how to do it myself, but there's plenty of good tutorials there on YouTube. I think Chaos has got a few, Sully's got something up, and I believe Massa has some tutorials up there as well, so just stick it on YouTube and you'll be able to find it pretty easily. But the main thing that I forgot that you need to do really if you're going to be doing multiples is to basically just save it, and then you can apply the effect or apply the image, if you like, onto that particular asset. Once the asset's applied or associated, I'm not really sure what the correct terminology would be, you can then change the scale and you can change the rotation, position and all the rest of it. So around the back of the stadium here we had a pretty flat section around the main stand, so we're going to basically stretch it out. We'll change the horizontal distortion of it, basically make it wider, and then we can just shift it into place and get several sections done. Around the side here it's just a case of picking each individual little stand, applying the image and then getting the rotation done. So pretty straightforward in the end, but it just takes a little bit of time just to get used to how it works. Now I'm going to get started on what turned out to be the most time consuming part of the build, and that is in fact the roof. In previous builds, like our football one, American football one, in fact I've made two of them, the horse racing track from some time ago back in Cape Lomond, we've used a mix of materials and really just depending on what's available at the time. So what I decided to do on this one is to use a few different materials, a few different props, and try and get a really nice effect. The initial part of it here, I'm using the border control roof. I'm not sure what asset that's actually from, but I'm going to lay them out, put them in lines, and then basically shift them into place with Move It. Now obviously making sure that the heights are the same, we are building in flat land here, so it makes sense to use Move It and then just snap to object height and then just shift them in place. I thought about doing it on the curves as well, but really it just looked a little bit messy. Wasn't really going to work, so I went back to good old pillars, and they are going to work quite nicely for the corner sections. Again, we just shift them into place, push them down, and then it is going to have a bit sticking out either side where basically the pillars are too big, so we'll get rid of them, and then what we'll do is once we've got both of these sections in place, we'll revisit it and then we'll add a few smaller pillars just to fill the gaps. Again, just making sure everything's at the same height so it looks nice and tidy and clean, but it should give us a pretty good effect. I am left with a few small gaps at the smaller stand, so we're going to use just exactly the same technique to get them sorted. Again, smaller pillars this time, don't want to use them too big otherwise they'll stick out. Again, just shift them into place, and then any extras we'll just trim off the fat, and we should have some pretty clean roof lines here, all going well. So a feature I talked about at the very beginning is using some of the glass props from Fraganaut to basically use on our stadium side. So again, going to be using Move It, make sure that everything gets lined up nicely. Once the alignment is just perfect, we're going to use Move It again. We'll just increase the height, and then that will basically give us a double height segment. Once that's done, we just move it into place, and that should work pretty well. One thing I would definitely like to see in terms of the glass, and I'm not really sure exactly how it's possible, but maybe to have something that's a little bit less tinted, something a little bit less dark, but still give us the glassed effect. I think that would be really, really handy to have. The adjustments are quite straightforward. Again, you can either use the functionality within Move It, or you can use the transform tool, whatever works for you, I guess. So in keeping with the stadium in shed, I decided we'll kind of copy their logo a little bit, we'll change it up somewhat. I ended up landing on this logo, very similar to FC20, but we are changing the design of it. We've got a Celtic cross in, we've got a horse in there with a sort of Celtic type design in it as well. So I think potentially we've got this sort of mythical looking horse, which in Scottish folklore would quite often be called a Kelpie. A Kelpie's a shape-shifting water spirit, and I think the folklore behind that is that it used the appearance of a horse to lure people to a watery grave. There's also some great public structures, massive structures in fact, just off a motorway in Scotland as well, called the Kelpies. Huge horses' heads, really spectacular. So I think I've come up with a nickname for the football team here. I reckon we're going to go with Kelpies. Kind of makes sense, I reckon. So much like the stadium itself, we've got a little bit of joint Scottish and Dutch folklore for the actual team itself too. Pretty nice. I don't really lean into lore for my cities, probably not really my style, but when the opportunity presents itself like this, then we make the most of it. So let's have a little check in, see how we're getting on now. I reckon if we stopped here, this would be a pretty good stadium as it is, but we're not even nearly done yet. So I still plan on adding plenty more detail to the stadium itself, and I am going to build out infrastructure a little bit and give it a proper setting within the actual development too. Now, this section with the additional roof props at the top, the struts or whatever you want to call them, are basically just chimneys. I'm going to be using some vanilla chimneys. You're going to see there's little red ones that I've basically just recolored. They're just vanilla base game ones. And then I'm going to use these larger ones. These larger ones, you'll notice, don't have smoke coming out of them. So I'm going to use the smokeless chimney asset mod by Erin here. Really useful. Couldn't have really made the build without it. There aren't really any other assets that I could find that would have really fitted the bill and that are the right size and right shape. Although it looks fairly simple in terms of putting it together, it's super time consuming. It took absolutely forever. But more on that later. First thing I wanted to do though is just change the orientation of the stadium itself. I wasn't really happy with the way it looked, and I want to create a couple of different entrances, one at the front, one at the back, and I want to make sure that I've got the right space without having to redo the roads to accommodate it. So I think it made sense, before I get any more prop work done or any more decoration done, is just basically settle on that orientation. So you're going to see me try and put together these individual props, and yeah, they definitely took a while. This is obviously speeded up, remember, of course. Once you've got one down, you can kind of copy and paste the rotation of the others, but it won't quite have the right position that you need. So obviously get the rotation done, then come back individually, shift them all into place, rinse and repeat, and basically do that all the way around the stadium. Doing the ones that were on the sort of straight edges, if you like, or the straight sides of the stadium wasn't too bad. It was just a case of shifting over with the transform tool, but the ones in the corner took a little bit further work, and I don't know if I'm exactly 100% happy with it. Could be a bit better, but it is what it is. There reaches a time in the build where you have to just say enough's enough and move on. I think in hindsight I probably would have maybe added some extra props and joined them all horizontally, but I don't think it was going to make a huge difference to the overall aesthetics come the end of the build. But I'm sure you will agree, once it's done, having these extra props on the roof really did make the world of difference, and it's not that hard to do. As I said, it's just time consuming, and probably there's a good reason why you'll not see too many stadiums like this in City Skylines too. So just one important step if you're doing any work like this yourself is make sure that you use the components lock and make sure that the elevation is locked on the props. You do not want them falling to the ground, and I think we are sorted. Now we've reached the point in the build where all of the repetitive sort of tedious stuff is done and dusted. We can now add these little touches to bring things all together. So you're going to use me see a number of static ploppables. For the stairs there on the outside, we are using some of the extractor industry props or buildings. At the front of that building where the main entrance is, that was the port, one of the port buildings I believe. This one is taken from the modern architectural pack, so you will need that DLC if you want to use the same asset yourself in your own build. And again, just as we add them, we'll get them recoloured and we'll try and stick to a colour palette that makes sense for this stadium. I thought about potentially adding individual gates around this front end of the stadium, but actually using some of the smaller glass assets I think worked quite nicely, and we are going to use some new light assets as well. So these light assets are called High Mast Light. They're by Executable Files 47. They are on PDX mods. They are significantly higher than anything else in the game, but crucially they also have a significantly larger radius for their light emittance as well. So when you use these bigger lights on stadiums or sports facilities, you can actually see the facility lit up significantly better, and it kind of reminds me of when you fly over a city at night time. You can always kind of point out and see these facilities really, really clearly, obviously because they're lit up, and it's going to give us that sort of effect which you saw at the beginning of the video and we'll show you again at the end. I will mention the pack comes with two variations. I'm going to be sticking with the LED lights that give us that bright cold look, but there's also a much warmer one. I think it's called a sodium light, and I guess that's some of the older type lights that you maybe got along the motorways and whatnot in the past. I'm going to use them on motorways here come the end of the video, and I am going to stick with the newer LED ones. I just prefer the look of it. I think it looks a little bit better in my eyes, but again, it's nice to have that choice and that decision you can make to have the older ones, or you can mix and match them, I guess, if they're in the, if the city's in the process of replacing older technology with newer, you can maybe have that look if you prefer, so up to you. I was left with this awkward patch of land here, and I think it made a perfect little position here, or a perfect little location for some commercial assets. So I think having a McDonald's just beside a major intersection in a city makes sense. We're going to have that, and obviously petrol station. So it's not going to be a proper motorway service station, but it will be functioning as almost as a mini one, I guess. And as and when we kind of have these little patches of land, I'm going to use a bit of a variation or a bit of a mix. For the bigger ones, I'm going to use the surfaces and the usual set of trees that we use on some of the bigger areas. So again, oaks, apple, small green bush, and I'm going to use just the same surface that we've used in previous episodes as well. Where we have some smaller parcels of land and I would like some variation, then I'm going to throw in some of the Real Vision decals, and then I can use whatever vegetation I want at the end of the day. But usually pick a little bit of contrast or a little bit of a mix in terms of sizes and colours, and we'll try and get things looking a little bit more interesting than just the normal vanilla stuff. So taking a little bit of time just to get that simple vegetation, a couple extra little surfaces. It's quite a subtle change, but it is a big one when you take it on its whole. Now, revisiting back over towards the stadium here, I wanted to do a little bit of surface work without going too mad. I'm going to use some of the pre-made parking that we have, and we're just going to simply change the surfaces. Surfaces tend to use as generic lemons ones. They're brilliant. Lovely little texture on them as well, and where we have a little bit of untidiness, we'll just go around and make sure that we get it sorted. Now, around the sides of the stadium, around the back of the stadium, I'm going to use little props here. These are little sheds, I think, that belong to schools, and we're going to hide some of it there, and then we're going to add a decal just to kind of make it look a little bit more detailed. For me, it looked a little bit oversaturated in terms of the white, so I'm just going to kind of make it a little bit more grey, and that should kind of tone things down a little bit. And this is one of Crypto Gamer's gates or doors decals as well. And we're going to do the whole stadium right the way around. Now, although the stadium itself is functional, and you'll see cars in a minute just heading in towards the stadium to actually use the park or the football pitch, we're not going to get too much parking on here, so I wanted to make sure that we definitely have just at least a few cars outside the front, and a little bit of staff parking and the team bus there. The surface work here is pretty straightforward. I am going to be using it sort of fairly extensively and covering some big areas. However, I will not be leaving that blank. It will look a little bit strange and a little bit artificial, maybe a little bit plastic if we just leave it as is. So we're going to break it up. We have these new planters, which look absolutely lovely. Super simple, really, really nice. Going to space them out a little bit, add a single tree, and we're good to go really on that regard. Again, little patches of grass here. We'll get them filled up a little bit. Now this might be a little bit more dense than I would usually do, but it was an awkward little spot and it needed filled. So here, this view, you can kind of see the variation and how much of a difference it makes just simply changing the colours on the parking itself. Super simple, super quick, but again, it's one thing that you can do in your city if you have a lot of parking, is to really just give it a little bit of variation and break up the monotony of the single colours. So on this entrance of the stadium, this will be a sort of fancier entrance, so to speak. We're going to add a little bit of public artwork here. This is the Urban Sculptures prop pack by Demodan. Really nice having these in here. We've used some of the sculptures from Rizra, and anybody who makes these will be going straight in the playlist. Now I'm going to make things a little bit more secure for our fictional pedestrians here, and people going to the football. Give them some bollards, and again we'll give them a little bit of light, make sure they're not walking about in the dark. Again, nothing too fancy here, we're just breaking things up a little bit. Again, a little bit of prop work for the daytime, but also the nighttime shots will look a little bit more illuminated as well. If I remember correctly, that is everything done on the main stadium part of this build. We have still half the land to go, and I almost feel like I'm cheating using this sports facility. It pretty much fits in its entirety within that development area. All I really needed to do was just delete some of the trees that were sort of bleeding onto the highway, or not the highway rather, but our local road, and then I'm going to add one of the Apex climbing facilities around the back, and we have a proper big sports complex. I'm going to give it some of its parking as well. And what was interesting actually a little bit later on, once we have everything hooked up, was that parking is used, and it's not necessarily used for the sports facility, but it's actually used for the commercial assets, the McDonald's and the petrol station that we have here to the right of the screen. In terms of how the citizens get onto this, we are going to be covering that in this section, and we'll be using again another new asset, another new mod, and plenty of new stuff in this video, which is nice to see. And I think everything's come along quite nicely in terms of that PDX ecosystem with props and all the rest of it. This overpass is actually really nice. Lovely details on it. I think what we need to do though is work a little bit on the groundwork. It's definitely not going to be sitting on grass, that's for sure, as we build it out. Talked about it in the past as well with the trams. I am gonna add the odd tram stop that has a cover. I couldn't really find any examples in the Netherlands, this of course being a Netherlands inspired build, but it's a nice little feature. I wanted them in. They certainly exist in other countries, so I am going to pop them in. Now, to solve a problem here with that janky terrain, we're going to use Crypto Gamer's cubes. That's going to act as a base for our overpass here, and then we're going to tidy it up, make it look a little bit better. Again, we're going to jump in, we use some of generic lemon surfaces here, and that will give us a much better effect. Simple path running down here, and again, I think what I'll do off camera is probably revisit this entire tram network. I think what I'd like to have is net lanes, on all of the elevated parts of it, but running it through grass here, or a grass net lane, I think works pretty nicely, and it kind of covers up the vanilla effect pretty nicely. So what I'm going to do at this point is basically finish off all of the little bits and pieces that are untidy. We'll get the surfaces sorted, any groundwork vegetation done, get some surfaces sorted out there in terms of the tram stop, get that properly propped up and make sure that it actually looks the part, looks super plain just now, and then what we'll do is we'll come back and we'll have a quick review at the end. So we can take a final look at what we've ended up with today, and you probably got a little bit more in this episode than perhaps you were bargaining for. This of course wasn't just a stadium build. I wanted to really flesh out that entire district and really just finish it off. We've extended commercial and leisure. We extended out the tram network. This will give us another important connection as we further expand the city in later episodes. I think it made sense that while we're doing all of the building work here and the expansion work, then we take a bit of time and get some of the details done as well. All of the highway that we put in previous episodes, all of the hard work was basically done already, but now that we have the actual buildings out here, it's time to actually make it look a little bit better. So taking that bit of time to do the extra vegetation and the surface work, not just on the interchange itself but around it, really does help make the entire development shine. Now, I mentioned at the beginning I was going to sort out the orientation of the bike lanes and make sure that they're up against the road. I think I jumped ahead of myself here. I think I actually do that in next episode rather than this one. I have them recorded in really short order. I got them recorded sort of right one after the other, and I think I'm getting myself mixed up in terms of my timelines. But nonetheless, they will be sorted in future episodes. Talking about future episodes, what's likely next on the channel is moving back over to the main island. It's starting to get really busy with that single tunnel that we have really connecting this part of the city to that part of the main island, and things are getting busy and they're going to get even busier still. So I plan to basically redevelop and have a small compact urban interchange, much like what we have in our financial centre. Be something similar, but we'll make it look a little bit different. And then what I want to do is I want to flesh out and add a bit of variety in that part of the city. So I'm thinking about extending out some of the Amsterdam school type architecture, introduce maybe a little pocket of older stuff, so maybe some churches and something that has a little bit of history, and then we'll add a little bit of something else as well, which you'll have to tune in and watch. But that's it from me, guys. Hope you enjoyed this one. Take care. I'll see you in the next one.